This is based off the Live Lab Introduction to Oracle Data Integrator 12C. Let's get started. So, first thing you want to do is go to Developer Services and then go to Stacks under Resource Manager. I've already pinned it. And what you're going to do is you're going to want to download this Terraform zip file that's already made available. And then you're going to want to create the stack, upload the zip, change it to zip file, upload the zip file. You can see I already have it here. Then you can give it a name of your choosing. Choose the compartment. I just put it in the root compartment. We see Terraform 0.11 is not supported anymore, so we're going to go with 0.13.x. Hit next. You give it the instance configuration, select the availability domain. We're going to need the remote access, so we're going to do a keygen. So if you need to figure out how to do that, there's the documentation, how to generate SSH keys. I've already done that. So then we're gonna go to hit next. And then click run apply to automatically approve it. I've already done that. You can see I have my stack up and running here. Next, we're going to go to our graphical user interface for ODI. So go to application information. We see the remote desktop is here. Show it, copy it, paste it. Let's go. We'll do a sign out so you can get the full breadth of experience of initiating the ODI Studio. So we want to do connect to repository, enter the wallet password, which you should have configured while doing the Terraform stack. Oh, it's because I changed my wallet password. Hit OK. It's initializing the environment. Click import. We're going to do smart import. Change it to basics. slash ODI underscore mappings, ODI underscore beginner underscore labs dot XML. Hit next. Wait for the wizard to process. Enter export key. So it'd be the same thing. So our wallet password. Hit next. No issues. We would click finish, but I don't want to replicate the same files because it might have issues later. So you can see I've already done that. You can check the status in the operator pane. So there's 4 panes: a designer, security, operator, and topology pane. Windows here on the left, you can see it. I've already successfully initialized the environments. So let's get started in ODI Studio. So the first thing we're going to do is create our first mapping. We're going to load data from SRC product table and the order application model into our TRG product family target table. So this is really just learning how to map data from sources to targets in ODI. So the first thing we're going to do is in our designer navigator, expand the demo project node in the projects accordion. Under sales administration, right click mapping, new mapping. Give it a name. Demo map 1. Make sure the create empty dataset option isn't selected, and then now an empty mapping window will appear on the screen here in the middle. So the first thing we're going to do is define the target. So the target is the element that will be loaded by the mapping. To insert the target in the load TRG customer mapping, we're going to want first verify that we are in the logical tab here. So you see there's 3 tabs: the overview, the logical, and the physical, and the mapping editor pane. So in the designer navigator, we're going to expand the models accordion here. And under sales administration, we're going to select TRG product family, and we're going to drag it and drop it to the mapping editor. So we've defined the target. Now the step 2 is defining the source. So the source data stores contain data used to load the target data store. 2 types of data stores can be used as a mapping source: data stores from the models and reusable mappings. So this example here will use data stores from the order applications and parameters models. To add source data stores to the load SRC product mapping, we're going to go to under models, drag the following data stores into the source diagram. So we're going to do SRC product, drag it and drop as a target. Let's go ahead and you can see the S stands for source, T stands for target. go to components. Our components here are on the right, which are our ETL tools and visualization tools. So we're going to grab the distinct component over here, and we're going to position it in the middle between the source and the target. We're going to want to drag the family name into the distinct target, the distinct component, and we're going to want to map it over to the target table. We're going to hit click save. You can see it's saved in there and our expression is correct. So want to select the family ID column in the target table, and we're going to want to type in our expression, upper substring dot family name 1 3 So the target table integration type is going to be defined in this section. So if we go to target, our integration type, we have control append, which appends data to target tables, and all the records are considered as inserts. Or we're going to change it to incremental update, which will update the existing data and just insert the new data. So we're going to use incremental update for this mapping. And this is all defining the target integration type. So now we've defined our target integration type for this mapping. Next, we're going to define the data loading strategies, also known as LKM. Learning, which stands for the loading knowledge modules. So the data loading strategies are defined in the physical tab of the mapping editor. Oracle Data Integrator automatically computes the flow depending on the configuration in the mappings diagram. It proposes default knowledge modules for the data flow. So the physical tab enables you to view the data flow and select the knowledge modules used to load and integrate the data. Loading knowledge modules are used for loading strategies, and integration knowledge modules are used for integration strategies. So we have both loading knowledge modules and integration knowledge modules. So you need to define the way to retrieve the data from the SRC product table in your source environment. To define the loading strategies, in our physical tab of the mapping editor, we're going to select the access point that corresponds to the loading of the source product. In this example, this is the distinct. So the property inspector should display the properties of the access point. And the property inspector, we're going to want to verify that the loading knowledge module SQL to SQL built-in option is selected in the loading knowledge module selector list. In our target database, loading knowledge module, we want loading knowledge module SQL to SQL, which is built in natively and globally. So now that we've done that, just click save. We're going to define the data integration strategies, also known as the integration knowledge modules. So we've we've already defined our loading knowledge module. Now we need to define our integration knowledge module to tell the data how it needs to be integrated. So we're gonna go to the physical tab, which we're already in, and we're gonna select TRG target product family and the target group object. The property inspector will display the properties of the target, and the property inspector set the ICANN integration knowledge module to integration knowledge module Oracle and incremental update. If you don't see that option, make sure you have correctly set the target integration type to incremental update in the logical panel. So we see it, so we know we've done that correctly. And the knowledge module options, we're just going to leave the default values as is, and you can see the property inspector appears as shown, and we're going to save it. And we're going to define the data control strategy as our next step. So in the preceding steps, we define the data flow from the source to the target, but now we must define how to check our control knowledge module and the constraints and rules that must be satisfied before we can integrate the data. So we're in the mapping physical tab of our mapping editor, and we have target product family selected. And under properties, we're going to select check knowledge module, and we're going to verify that it's CKM Oracle, and we've done that. So we're going to go back to our logical tab. We're going to select the target stored TRG customer, and we're going to verify the constraints panel. And we're going to click, it's already saved. And now finally we're going to run this mapping now that we have everything primed and ready to go. So we're going to click on data in our target table. And we see the data that's in there. And now it's ready. We can see it's ready to run. So we're going to click run to run the mapping. Just going to hit OK. Hit OK for session start. We're going to refresh the designer tab, navigator. And now we're going to go to we're going to verify the data in the table after the run, just like we did before. And we see that the data is in the target table. And next we go to the operator navigator, go to status to see the status of the job. And we see that it successfully did the mapping. It takes a second to just exit the session, went back in, because it takes a second to show under the status tab, and we see the status as successful. Okay, so we've completed our first mapping, which we map data from our source into our target table. Now we're going to do the second mapping. So we're going to want to go back to our designer navigator, and we are going to want to go to under demo, expand the sales administration node, mappings, new mapping yet again. Demo map 2. Make sure create empty data set is not selected. We see the empty window appears in our mapping editor yet again. And we're going to just go through the steps. So we're going to define the target first. So first we're going to define the target, then define the source, and then we're going to do it instead of doing a distinct component, we're going to do a join component, because the different types of ETL tools, and we're going to define the target integration type, and then define the data loading strategies, the data integration strategies, define the data control strategy, and then finally run the mapping. So first, let's define the source. So we're going to go to under the models accordion, we're going to drag SRC product under order application to the mapping editor, and then drag target product family from the sales administration folder. And TRG product. So we're just going to put it exactly how we want it to be visualized. Grab a distinct component, put it here. Grab a join component, put it here. So we're going to create the mapping, drag family name from SRC product, from source product, into the join. Just click OK. We're going to drag distinct to the target. Now we have our mapping, click OK, and we can see what our mapping editor looks like. So now we're going to click on our join component, and we are going to we see the expressions already done for us because the ODI is becoming extremely intelligent. So we defined our source. Now let's define our we define our source and target. Now let's define our target integration type. So this is going to be familiar to what we did in the first mapping. So we're going to select our target table, and we're going to go to target, and we're going to change we're going to keep control append as our integration type in this case. Let's click save as we go. Next, we've defined our source, defined our target, defined our target integration type, and now let's define our data loading strategies. So the data loading, so we're going to go to our physical tab in our mapping editor yet again. Click our source product because it's the access point. We're always going to start, when we define our data loading strategies, we're always going to start with the access point of our target group. So we go to attributes, or loading knowledge module. We're going to go LKM SQL to SQL built in, again, like we did in the first mapping. Click save. And now we're going to we define our loading strategy. Now let's define our data integration strategy. So now we're going to select TRG product, just like we did in the first mapping. In the property inspector, we're going to change ICAM to ICAM global insert global. We see it's done that. If it's not in the list, make sure you've correctly set the target integration type to control append in the logical panel, because that is the area associated with that issue. In the knowledge module options, we're just going to leave them default yet again. And now we're going to define our data control strategy. So we're going to do our check knowledge module again. All this should be very familiar to you at this point. So verify that it's check knowledge module Oracle for our CKM, and it is. So we're going to go back to our logical view. We're going to select TRG product and verify. We're going to verify the constraints panel. So go to constraints, and we see all the constraints we want are set to true. And it's already saved. So finally, we're ready to run the mapping. So go back. And click run. Click OK. Session started. And then